Hey, Alisa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. So this week we're talking building in Westlake and what you should know if this is something you're considering. So today we wanted to go over some really helpful information if you are wanting to buy a lot in Westlake to build a new home. We are going to interview Jenny on the subject since she builds houses in Westlake and also lives there. She currently has a huge project going on in Westlake Hills, and she has also built in Rollingwood, Rob Roy, Camelot, and Westlake Hills. So we're going to start off with talking about what you will find if you're looking for a lot in Westlake.
Yeah, so if you're looking for land in Westlake, you won't find a lot of vacant land. Most of what you'll have an existing older home that might need to be torn down. And even as young as 1980s or so.
I know.
I think the most recent house we tore down maybe was 80s, but there was just no fixing the layout. So, yeah, just plan on that in your budget that probably you're going to have to tear down a house.
Yeah.
One of the most popular neighborhoods right now that a lot of people are building in is Rollingwood. It seems like there's several houses per street that new houses are being built, or a house has just been torn down or about to be torn down. But some other popular neighborhoods are for tearing down and building are Westlake. Westwood. Sorry, Westlake Hills is another one. I personally like Rob Roy. There aren't as many there right now, but I think it's a great area. It's gated community, and those houses are 80s. And then a newer, more up-and-coming neighborhood that people are tearing down is Lost Creek.
Yeah.
And that I would say that started in the last maybe three years or so. When the other neighborhoods, it's Westwood and Rollingwood, it's been going on for quite some time. But Lost Creek, some of those houses have some funky layouts, right?
They do. Really funky layouts, lots of levels. And sometimes you just can't really renovate it and make it modern because the way that it was built.
Yeah, when I look at a house to decide whether I can remodel it or it needs to be torn down, I look at ceiling heights and like hallways. Are they super narrow? You can't really change that. In ceiling heights, many times you can't change. There's just I don't want to go so deep in a house and put so much money in a house when there's several things that are going to hurt it at the end of the day. So I'm more prone to tear down a house than remodel it.
Hurts my heart only a tiny bit.
Yes.
I mean, I know what takes over in its place is so much better, but it is kind of sad.
Yeah, I like 10-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
And older houses have 8-foot ceilings, sometimes 7.5.
Yeah.
And there's just really no fixing that. So I feel like I've done a ton of remodeling, and in my remodeling days, I've felt like it's so gorgeous, but the things I've had to sacrifice on.
Yeah.
So I know I know some people get upset, but I mean, if it's an historic home or craftsman style, something like that, then for sure preserve it. But 70s, 80s house with a funky layout, I think it needs to, or is your best use of money and best return is to tear it down. So. But yeah, Lost Creek, we were talking about the funky layouts, and it's because of the topography. Well, some of it's just that's what it was in the 70s and 80s.
It was kind of the style, right?
True. But then you see the drawbridge houses, and most of that is because the topography. The lot just goes kind of off a cliff, and that's why they needed to build the drawbridge to get to the main level of the house.
Yeah. And now I feel like we also see that houses are being built differently. Like there was a neighborhood that we showed a couple houses in recently in the Great Hills area, and those houses were built like into the edge of the cliff.
Right.
And so there was no drawbridge situation there. But I feel like if it was somebody was building on that land in the 70s or 80s, that's exactly what they would have done.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And it's still, I mean, when you have that much topography, you're going to have to sacrifice something still. But I think nowadays you can do way better than a drawbridge. But it might just still be the upside down layout where you walk in at the main level and then you have bedrooms downstairs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay, so next thing that we're going to cover is the different cities and jurisdictions that there are in Westlake. So can you tell us a little bit about how many jurisdictions in the different cities?
yeah, sure. So when people think of Westlake, it encompasses about 30 square miles, so it's huge. And a lot of people don't know that that's not just the city. There is a city of Westlake, but only a small part of Westlake is in the city of Westlake. It actually is several different jurisdictions in several different cities. So the four different jurisdictions are, number one is Westlake Hills, and they have their own mayor, council, police force. I think they even have a jail.
Really?
Yeah, but they have their own permitting, so they have their own building department, building
Yeah.
zoning, all of that. And then Rollingwood is very much like that, where they have all those. They have their own police force, city council, mayor, and then City of Austin is also in that area. And the fourth one is Travis County only. So it's not in any city, it's just in the county. And that is, when it's just in the county, that is typically the easiest place to build and one of my favorite places to build because you don't have as much red tape.
Yeah. I have some builder clients that I've worked with, and they will only buy in certain areas, and they don't like buying in Austin to build because it's so hard.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like the worst is hard, most challenging, I should say, is City of Austin to build in. Still, out of all these jurisdictions, it is City of Austin. I think it's gotten harder in the last year or two.
Yeah.
So I
Lots of red tape.
don't think they're super builder friendly and development friendly. They haven't made it there. They just kind of keep adding layers of challenges. But Westlake Hills has its challenges as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, can you tell us a little bit more about each of these different cities and their individual rules on development and construction? Kind of break it down for us.
Yeah, so let's start with Westlake Hills. They are, I believe, one of the hardest to get permitting through because they are one of the strictest on their rules. Once you get the permit, I really think, knock on wood somewhere, they're not that bad. It's just getting everything done to get the permitting in and get the permitting through, get it approved. The number one hardest part is the rules on the lot. If you're in a smaller lot, I haven't checked the rules now. But I assume it's the same, but please check everything that I'm saying because this has been over years. But they consider 1 acre to be a legal lot, and they base all their setbacks and impervious cover on 1 square acre. And so if you're under 1 acre, the setbacks and the impervious cover are really a challenge because their side setbacks are 25 feet.
Wow.
So normal areas like in City of Austin that have smaller lots are typically 10-foot side setbacks. So when you get on a smaller lot, in Westlake Hills, smaller lot is 1/3 of an acre, 0.3 of an acre. But when you get to 25 feet, your house, you'll have to turn it and then it'd have to be narrow. And then also the impervious cover, I think it's 25% of the lot can only be covered as the rules are written, with concrete and house and all of that, which works just fine. Well, semi works on an acre. It works better on like 2 acres if you want to build a big house, or acre and a half. But when you compare it to City of Austin, at 45% of the lot can be covered, it's a challenge for sure on the smaller lots or on an irregular. The setbacks are a challenge on the irregular sized lots. And a lot of people, even builders that go in on these lots, They have no idea about these rules. And I remember when I bought my first place in Westlake Hills in 2013, I got the survey, and I'm looking at the setbacks, and thinking of what we can do with it based on those setbacks. And I went into the city planner, and he drew lines on my survey of where the actual setbacks were, and it was not good. I think I might have shed a tear.
Oh no.
Yeah.
The things you should know before. And again, like you just said, all of this can change over time. So this is just educational and giving you examples, but this stuff does change. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I am building in Westlake Hills right now. Mm-hmm. So I did
this is pretty fresh.
I did just go through the permitting process. But it's on a bigger lot. I think it's 1.3, 1.4. And so setbacks and impervious cover work just fine for what we're trying to do on this lot. But the next really most challenging thing about Westlake Hills is the trees. They have very strict tree rules. And most cities and Travis County for sure, they don't really have too many rules about trees. But Westlake Hills has the strictest rules about trees. And being that cedar trees, you can't just go in and clean out the cedar trees like you would assume. It's funny, people show up and they're like, oh yeah, usually we just get rid of the cedar trees and you keep the oaks.
Yeah.
And
Clearly
I have to tell them to stop right there. That's not how it works here. Only the trees that have been approved through the city. So this particular lot that we are building on right now had 400 trees, and we had to get every one surveyed. So it was a very expensive survey.
Yeah.
And then we had to have a huge spreadsheet of all the trees. And it was tons of time to figure out which ones that we were going to take, and we had to ask permission. So the rules are anything above 6 inches up to 14 inches, you have to ask permission and do replacement inches. So you have to plant back. You have to go off their list of what's approved and figure out how many replacement inches that counts as. And then you need to ask permission of the City of Westlake. Now, if the tree is 14 inches or bigger, 14 inches or bigger, no matter if it be hackberry, cedar, of course oak, then you cannot take it. You have to get a variance. So you have to go present, I think it's to council. It might be zoning and planning or both. I knew I did not want to do that. So we
targeted the little ones.
Well, I just did my research on the lot before and figured out that we could do things without a variance. That's key in Westlake Hills. I just try to stay away from the variance process because I've done that before. I think I've gone in for 4 or 5 variances, and it's a process, and you may or may not get it. So I don't think they're super friendly to builders, and I would just count on not getting it, even though maybe you could. With a lot of effort and money and time, maybe you could get a variance, but I wouldn't count on it. So, So 14 above 14 inches is the variance process, but below that, you have to turn everything in and ask for it, and then you'd have to put it back with replacement inches.
Wow, and 6 inches is so tiny. Like, you have to make sure that you don't have trees just pop up.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is, this lot had never been really maintained. It did have a house on it, but they just never. They never had people come and trim up the trees or cut down anything. So there were a lot of dead ones. The dead ones are also free. You don't have to do replacement inches.
Oh, okay.
But we ended up with a ton of replacement inches because of where we put the driveway, we moved the house. So we have a lot to put back. But the thing is, if you do live in Westlake Hills, I suggest you trim and cut your trees before they get to be 6 inches.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild to me. So I have a question, just kind of along this whole thing. You've mentioned it a couple times. You've talked about going into the city and having a meeting. What is it like to get that meeting? Is there a waiting period? What was your experience with the meeting and getting a sit down?
This time I did not meet with the city. I know the old city planner, and I had some conversations with him about how to put in the best package. And then I emailed with the city planner, and there's now a permitting woman there. But getting a meeting with them, I think would be sort of hard. But I didn't try this time. I just turned everything in and did have email communication.
Yeah. So you know what you were doing.
Before, when I knew nothing about Westlake Hills, I did go in and I met with a city planner, and he was so nice, and it was pretty easy to get in. Now I don't know, like the environment was not near the same as it is now. They're overwhelmed, and there's just so much construction going on. If it's something big, you could probably get a meeting, but to meet with city council and all of that, you need to set up to get on their calendar to present
to the board
or to council.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot of steps. And I feel like sometimes it's hard. The last time I had to talk with the city to get info on something, I was juggled to like 5 or 6 different people, and this wasn't even in Westlake.
Yeah.
This is somewhere else, but it's a lot of work to get into the right person if you don't really know what you're doing.
That's City of Austin. The City of Westlake.
This wasn't. It was small. It was Hutto.
Oh.
It's tiny.
I kind of heard Hutto's hard these days, but I don't know.
Well, there's lots of new development. I'm sure they're very busy.
Yeah.
But it just reminded me of that because that's kind of how
the City of Westlake is not hard. It's a very small office, and I do know the person that works the front desk, and he's been there forever, probably longest standing person. So he is usually very helpful, and there's not that many people to get through.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's
they
a
did
positive note.
They did some reorganization, and I feel like the city planner left, and then he came back, and I sort of know him. I don't want to say I have any special connections, but I've dealt with. I think I have met with him in the past, so I have and keeping a good relationship with everybody is very important. Yeah. Even when you get bad news, you have to be nice.
Be nice, yeah.
You always just have to be nice because they're dealing with mean people, probably a lot. People that are mad, people that go in that have no idea about any of this.
Yeah, and then they're upset when it doesn't go the right way.
They're very upset.
Which I do understand.
I heard a story of someone coming in from out of town buying a place in Westlake Hills, and I don't know if they were building, but they were just getting rid of the cedar trees, and I think they got rid of a lot of cedar trees, and they got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And they were very unhappy they questioned, why did I buy in Westlake Hills? And I didn't know.
Yeah.
But a lot of Westlake Hills, you have your older generations that have been there forever, and they want to keep it like it has been, and they love all the cedar trees. And my biggest concern is when you get back in Westlake Hills on those 1-lane crazy roads is if there's a fire. That would be pretty dangerous with, trees that aren't cleared out or cleaned up. But it is beautiful, and I think it's really neat. You can be in the city of Austin, and you can be downtown, and 5 minutes later you can be in Westlake Hills and feel like you're in deep in the woods or in the country.
In the hill country or somewhere.
Yeah, you can. There's expansive views. You can have complete privacy. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and they have they're dark sky compliant, so they also are strict on your lights, your exterior lights, but that just keeps it where you can still see the night sky.
Some stars,
yeah.
I like that. Okay, so some people don't know this, but there are parts of Westlake that are also in the city of Austin. Can you tell us more about what it's like to build in those areas?
Yeah, so the Bee Cave Woods and the neighborhoods off of Walsh Charlton, and then there's a few neighborhoods off of Stratford, And then Lost Creek was recently annexed into City of Austin,
Oh, I
but
didn't know that.
all of those areas are City of Austin. Yeah, Lost Creek was annexed. I can't within the last maybe 4 or 5 years. Don't quote
Okay.
me, but I remember I had a remodel project in there when that was going on, and there were so many remodels going on just before they got annexed because the remodel process is so much different. Once you become in the city, you'll have to get more permits and take more time to go through the city and all of that if you're in the city versus the county.
Yeah.
So, but if you buy something that's in the city of Austin, like we kind of mentioned earlier, there's a lot more rules. There's tree rules. I think City of Austin tree rules are 19 inches. And I think you can take cedars at whatever, maybe not whatever size, but surely 6 to 14 inches. I think you can take those
Yeah.
without even asking. But check on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but 19 inches is a protected tree versus City of Westlake is 14.
Yeah.
So
That's a
you have
big difference.
yeah, you have more leeway.
Yeah.
But I have not done anything in City of Austin in quite some time, but a lot of my trades will tell me about it and they are not happy. Some of my trades won't even work in City of Austin. If the if the plans that they are being sent for a bid are City of Austin, sometimes they'll say no, thank you.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it just takes so long.
It's more cost for them. It's more red tape. The inspections are tougher. Not that any of my guys are doing anything, but in my past dealing with City of Austin, I have no idea if it's better now. But one inspector would come in and say one thing, and then you'd go fix it. Another inspector would come in and say they wouldn't send the same inspector for the house.
Yeah.
And so that's really challenging to have different opinions.
Yeah.
To have inspectors with different opinions.
That is really hard.
Yeah.
I could see how that would make things take a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say the one thing about City of Austin that is good is the impervious cover is 45%. So a lot more than City of Westlake. And the setbacks are typically better. Now setbacks have to do with city rules, and they can be the deed restrictions in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I was about to say. So we're not in a city for our property, but we do have a deed, and the deed specifies
Yeah.
the setbacks.
Yeah.
So we have to follow those, or you can't get in trouble.
Yeah.
And resell too. You have to think about resell.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't get into trouble while you own the house, but I have worked with buyers who've turned houses down that they maybe loved otherwise because of, they didn't follow the rules for a setback or didn't pull permits for updating the house. That happens sometimes in City of Austin. Permits weren't pulled, and somebody's going to have to deal with it at some point. Or, and who knows when that is, whether it's that you have to deal with it because it comes to light during the time that you own it, or you have to address it if you try to list your house and somebody doesn't want to buy it because of it.
And this is a little bit off topic, but having to do with City of Austin is I've had experiences in the past where I was remodeling a house, going in to get a permit, and it turns out there were old open permits. And so one thing, if you are going to remodel in City of Austin, or really any house in City of Austin, you should check. It's a public database. I think I just searched City of Austin permit search, and I think the site comes in, you put the address in. It's a little bit tricky on years. You can't do, the whole time. You just have to do a segmented date range. But if there is an open permit, in the past, they wouldn't let you get a new permit, so you'd have to get that one closed out. It was sort of a pain back in the day. Pools were very big. Swimming pools were a big culprit of that happening.
Okay.
And it didn't mean that it wasn't permitted. It just means that either the city didn't document it correctly, or the pool builder never got it finalized. Yeah.
I didn't know that. And that does apply. I don't feel like it's too off topic because some of these properties are in the city of Austin. So
Yeah, but if you're going to tear it down, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
But if you're going to remodel, then yeah, it's real important because what I've done is now that I know when I sell a house in City of Austin, I do go check that. And if there is something, then I get the owner to work on closing that out
Okay. I like that.
before closing, hopefully.
Yeah. We should include a link for this.
Yeah, the permit search.
We'll include a link in the show notes and then also in the blog.
Yeah.
So that people can find it if that is something that you need.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So next is the city of Rolling Woods. What's it like to build there? Can you go into that a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, so Rollingwood has been in the past pretty good to build in, pretty reasonable, I should say. I do believe that they've had a turnover in staff lately, and I've heard that things are getting backed up. There was a woman that was there before that was amazing, and I loved her, and she was very reasonable. But I think who's ever taken over, maybe they just, and maybe it's several people, maybe things are just getting bogged up.
Yeah.
So it's a big job for anybody. But that might be the biggest challenge right now is that things are just getting kind of backed up. And so I would say the hardest thing about building in Rollingwood is drainage, is getting through all of the drainage. And so when Rollingwood was developed, and I don't know, was it the 70s maybe that it was developed, 60s or 70s? There was no drain. They didn't think about drainage. And so there's no drainage ponds. Like when they build a new neighborhood today, you'll see a drainage pond and there'll be a whole drainage plan of how it has to go. You know, in older areas, you'll see ditches where water travels.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing like that in Rollingwood. So now that these small 1-story, 1,500 square foot houses are being torn down and a big 8,000 square foot house is being put up, it's causing big drainage problems. So what happens is this big house is built next to these tiny little houses that may be downhill. And so it's causing these houses to maybe get water in them when they didn't before. So they make you go through, when you have your plans, they make you hire, you have to hire a civil engineer to have this, you have to put, it's called a drainage pond, but really it's like walls to slow down the water from your lot, to keep the water on your lot and then let it trickle out so that it's not rushing out to other
Neighboring lots.
Yeah. And then you have to have your civil engineer come up with that plan of how the drainage is not going to affect your neighboring lots. And then their city engineer looks over everything. And that is the big holdup. I had heard that they were recently, maybe there was a newer engineer, something like that. But I know someone currently that's trying to get their plans through, and it's been taking a lot longer than normal.
Okay. Like revisions, do you know?
I think just to even look at it, the civil engineer to just look at the plans.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, impervious coverage, and why that can also be so important, because that also affects the flow of the water.
It does.
And if it has a place to go and soak into the ground.
Yeah, it does. But Rollingwood doesn't, to my knowledge, really have impervious cover rules. It's more because there are big lots or big houses being built, taking up so much of the lot that it would not be allowed in Westlake Hills. It would not be allowed in the city of Austin. So I think that's this is just my opinion, but why they have even a bigger drainage problem, because there's really not an impervious cover rule.
Okay.
I don't know that you can take up every square inch. I don't think you can. There might be something in the rules, but I don't think there's a 45% rule. But again, check if you're looking to build, check all of what I say.
Yeah. I mean, make sure it hasn't changed. I feel like this stuff changes all the time.
It does. It does.
You have to keep up
One
with
thing
it.
that did change is there used to be no rules on trees. And that changed, I feel like, from under our noses. I lived in Rollingwood at the time, and I never saw that we even got to vote on it, but I'm not one that's, attending all the city council meetings or anything.
Yeah.
So, but all of a sudden we had an ordinance for trees, which is okay, but I think they should be fair.
Mm-hmm.
I love trees, but I don't want a tree to stop you from being able to build a house on a lot. I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the trees have gotten a little bit stricter. The rules around surrounding trees a little bit stricter, but I don't think they're anywhere near what City of Austin and City of Westlake are.
Okay. Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So now let's touch a little bit on the places that you can build that aren't in
The cities. Yeah.
I'm going to start that over. So let's talk a little bit about the places that you could build that aren't in a city but are just in a county.
Yeah. So Westwood is one of the, it's so funny because it's right in the middle of all of this. So City of Westlake is right here. City of Rollingwood is right here. Westwood's in the center. City of Austin's right here.
Mm-hmm.
They resisted being annexed. And then Sundown Parkway is the same. So something happened back in the day. There is a story behind it where they resisted being annexed. It was on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And how they still haven't been, I guess the neighborhood rebels. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how if people are still trying and they just resist. I don't know. But it's a good thing that they are not, for them and for anyone wanting to build in those areas, that they're not in the county.
I like the diversity of it. Like,
Yeah.
depending on your style and what you're looking for in a home and where you want to live, and if you want everything to look the same throughout, then you have choices. I like to have that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times people looking for houses like that too. We have plenty of clients that are like, I will only look for a house in an HOA, or I will only look for a house with this type of neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it means that there's still something for everyone.
Well, it's interesting that even though like City of Rollingwood, City of Westlake have rules, they don't, it's not like being in an HOA.
Mm-mm.
They're not regulating what the elevation looks like. I mean, these are custom homes, so they're not, they're not all going to look alike and have to switch up. But I will say one thing about Rollingwood is, there's all sorts of different styles, and there'll be a tall foundation maybe next to when they built the new house, maybe that foundation super tall and the existing house was a 1-story. So it gets a little funny because there isn't an HOA to regulate that sort of thing. But so Westwood is not in any city. And I'll talk about Sundown Parkway as well. And then you get further west, and there are several pockets. And then definitely a lot of the land west of 360 is not in any jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. And so most of those lots are on, and Rolling Hills. Rolling Hills is one of my favorite neighborhoods in Westlake because the location is really close to the high school, and it's not in the city. And city sewer has been coming into those lots. They were on septic, and I don't think city sewer's on every street, but I know it's coming in to those areas. So it's just easier to build in a close-in area. But Westwood, I know the lots are typically around 1/3 of an acre, and what dictates what you can build there is the septic design, septic system, and drain field. So on average, generally on those lots, you can build around 4,500 square foot home. You might have to sacrifice sometimes a pool or a 3-car garage if you want that square footage. But it really, I think I don't know if they count the tanks, but I know they count the drain field of the septic system against the 50%.
For the coverage.
Mm-hmm. So they count the house and the septic drain field, and probably the tanks, but I'm not positive. And so if they make you do a soils test, and I think that's typically done through the septic person, but the soil has to be a certain type, and then that's generally, if it's this, I can't remember if it's type 2, type 3. If it's this certain type, then that's generally what you'd be able to build. But if they sense more clay, so it'll be a different type of soil, then it cuts back on what you can build there. And it can be as crazy as you get one septic designer so there's a septic installer and there's a septic designer, and the septic designer or septic engineer will design how everything works and how big the drain field needs to be. And if you have a different designer that creates a bigger drain field, that's how their numbers work out, then you can build less of a house. So there's a lot to be careful of, but that's the number one situation I would say that you would come up against in a place like Westwood. Sundown Parkway, those lots are acre plus, so there's no problem.
Yeah.
Unless you're on some sort of drop off, but a lot of those lots are really great.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's good info. It seems like with each of these, and this is normal for anywhere that you go, but for each of them, you're kind of trading off the hard thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just easier in the county.
Yeah. I mean, out of all of those things, like the septic would probably be the easiest, right?
It is. So in the county, as far as permitting goes, you have to get permits for development in the septic system through the county. You turn in your plans, but they're looking at in the driveway. So they care mostly about the septic system, and then they care about the driveway. And other than that, like they do no inspections, like when you're building the house.
Yeah, no phase inspections or anything.
Yeah, and another thing that I forgot to mention, an overlay is the water district. They will require inspections if you're in certain water districts. They'll oversee the plumbing.
Yep.
Yeah.
That can get complicated.
And then an overlay of all of Westlake, and I'm not sure if City of Austin is part of this, but I do think they are. I think it has to do with the fire department area that they oversee. But most likely you'll have to put a fire suppression system inside in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you're remodeling, the last I heard, that if you're remodeling more than 50% of the house, you'll have to put a fire sprinkler system in. Another thing, actually, that's super important, I can't believe I forgot to mention this when you're building in Westlake, is to get the fire hydrant tested. That is the number one thing you need to do. And get that test done through the fire department. Sometimes they have a test. It's through the fire department and the water district, and sometimes they'll have those on file. And I believe it's the flow and pressure are too low, they might not allow you to build a house.
So would you have that done during your option period if you're looking to buy a lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Right away. Number one thing.
I didn't know that. That's super interesting.
Well, I know. I learned things the hard way.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You're gonna tell us the story.
Yeah. So I bought a lot in Rob Roy, and it was funny because it was in a time when Westwood, I remember I'd made several offers, and maybe Rollingwood, I don't know. I'd made several offers, kept missing out. I found pockets before I hit the market. I kept missing out on these lots, and I wasn't cash.
Yeah.
I wasn't a cash offer at the time. So I just was getting exhausted.
Yeah.
And tired of missing out.
Buyer
So
fatigue.
I crossed over 360 and found this, what I thought was a great lot in Rob Roy, and I felt like nobody else was looking at it. It was on the market for 50 days when I was getting multiple offers just inside 360, competing with lots of other builders, but nobody even thought about this one. And I just had a vision for this one, and turned out amazing. But I think I didn't do the fire hydrant test until maybe we owned it. And I got very bad news that it was, I can't remember if it's low flow or low pressure or both. But the fire department, I can't remember if they said I couldn't do what I wanted to do. But I do know they made me build a fire rated house.
Oh, wow. So
Which
it just really upped
increased
your budget.
Costs a lot, and it was not easy. There was not a manual on how to do it, so it was a lot of back and forth, and the fire department doesn't say, oh, you need to do it this way. So there was a lot of back and forth. Would this be okay? And then the fire department came in at several different phases to make sure I was doing it to their,
Yeah.
what they wanted. And that included, I had to do special covers over all the can lights, fire. So if fire was to get through that hole, that it would just implode and put out the fire on top of the recess can. And then I had to do this fire putty around every electrical outlet, so that basically it's sealing off all the holes, so that if fire were to get in these areas, it would be either it would put it out, or it would contain it more so that I had a fire sprinkler in the house. Even I had to put them on the patios. The whole thought is to give people more time to get out of the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is
Get the fire
that checked
hydrant
during your option period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's something it's not common everywhere. So you just
No, I had there's very few houses that are built that way. And building is already so challenging. That was added a whole nother layer. Yeah. The AC system, it had to be like commercial grade. All the vents, they had to, if they sensed fire, I think they had solder on them. They had to just shut so that the fire couldn't get in all the ducting system.
That just sounds so expensive. It just sounds like a lot.
I can't remember what it added to the build, but maybe 50,000. It just wasn't expected, and then it added a layer of challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite a safe house, though. Fire-wise.
I hope so. I'm not sure
Wow.
how I feel about it all, but
yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
One that you'd rather not do again.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't build that
hydrant.
way. I don't. Yeah. I'm not building just because.
Yeah.
That way. So.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's so many other ways that a house could catch on fire, but.
Yeah. And I mean, of course you're building things to code, but that's just an extra layer. And I do get it. Like, if there's not water available to put a fire out, then,
Yeah, and I did not know this, but I recently called my fire sprinkler guy, and if there's a fire from the outside coming, say the neighborhood catches on fire, a fire sprinkler, I think, does nothing. I mean, it might help you get out. But, and even if there's a fire inside, hopefully it will put that fire out, but it might not, and at least it will help you get out. But it's more likely to help you with the fire inside, because obviously the heads are inside. But if there's a fire coming from the outside, it really is not going to do much at all.
okay.
So it gives you about an hour. My concern with fire sprinklers is freezing. I worry about really low temperatures, and especially a couple of years ago when we lost power. They're meant to be in houses with heat on.
Yeah.
So it could just be catastrophic if something happened to a fire sprinkler system that froze.
I hadn't thought about that.
And then broke.
Mm-hmm. That would be huge. I mean, for all those people during the winter storm that had something as small as a water heater blow up.
Yeah.
That through the whole entire house is something completely different.
True.
That's
true. Yeah, the water heater's just in one area. Yeah.
I mean, there was water flowing out of them,
right?
Especially if they were the tankless ones, then it was a little more.
And alarming. I think the fire sprinkler, if it breaks, it's going to be like in an area that's too close to the wall that wasn't insulated right, or in the attic that wasn't insulated, something like that. But the no heat thing is the really bad part. Of that whole situation. Yeah. But I've heard, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of like apartments or commercial that's more common that they freeze. Just, I think they were maybe just not insulated in that area.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, they can. Well, this is all super helpful info. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap it up?
just if you're looking to build in Westlake, just give us a call and we'll see how we can help you.
Yeah.
I mean, we are realtors. We are realtors.
Yeah.
And I build for myself, and I do specs. I build for my family. I am not a builder. I'm not a custom builder at this time, but we work with a lot of people looking to build, and we just have a lot of value to offer someone looking to build in these areas.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like the fire hydrant story. Is sometimes you don't know about it until you've done it. So not only do we have those stories to share and those experiences, but we also know companies that are land planning companies that we can refer you to if you don't want to have to do all the legwork. There are companies that will do all of it for you. So we could refer you to a company like that. Or, sometimes it's just having somebody say, okay, this is kind of the steps that you have to go through.
Yeah.
As real estate agents, no, we will not go and confirm all of this for you. That's not our job, and we wouldn't want to get information from the city and then be told something different at a later date.
Yeah, I mean, through it all, just get your own fact information. This is really just a summary of what my experience has been building in these different areas. But we are happy. We know builders. We know fantastic builders in the area. We can give you a great list. I mean, we can work with you through the whole process. But the biggest thing is the knowledge that we have on finding you a great lot and having a great overview of what you can do on the lot. And then happy to talk to builders and help set you up with the right one and set expectations. And yeah, it's just right up our alley.
Yeah. All those bits and pieces are hard to pull together, especially if you've never done it before and don't know what you're doing. So sometimes it's about, here's where to go to do the research and get the answer to that question. That's a big part of it.
Exactly. Oh, and then also we know architects, so we can just help the process be as smooth as possible.
Yeah. Whole package.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we hope we provided a lot of valuable information for someone looking for a lot in Westlake and looking to build. Please reach out to us if you are interested in purchasing a lot in the area.
Yeah, great.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right.